right. Hopefully we're in the correct one. Yeah, here's Sam. Okay. Kayla will be along shortly.
Good
I
morning,
am very
Sam.
sorry. I overslept.
We forgive you.
Kayla was Johnny on the spot and got a meeting going on her Zoom just in case.
Oh man, I usually don't do this. In fact, I think I can't remember the last time I was late for a GCC. I know there was one, but it's been quite a while because I try to take this seriously.
Well, we'll have some fun with it this time. We'll do parodies of our misadventures.
Sorry, I'm having camera issues here.
Anyway, I hope the discussion was good over in the other session.
We're just worried about you.
Yeah, we were worried. Glad you're okay.
Oh, I forgot. There's a new update of Zoom. I wonder if I should have done that. I'm seeing little sparklies on my video. I don't know if it's my computer or whatever, but all the windows have little sparklies.
All of them?
I'm like, yeah, mine and yours. So it's got to be on my end of it that is causing it. It could also be my graphics card is just getting low.
I'm effervescent, but I don't think I'm sparkly.
Well, yeah, little green, sprinkles. That I don't know where. I think it's local on my computer.
Manny, good to see you again.
Let me just see if it's on the other monitor.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, it's only on the one monitor, so it's on one half of my graphics card. The one that feeds the second monitor has got the sparklies. So I think my other port needs to be.
Well,
brushed.
I still think it's pretty impressive since it sounds like you're using an 8-bit machine there.
I'm using a 2006 Mac Pro, the very first model, which was supposed to become obsolete as of OS X Lion, but I found a hack to get it up to El Capitan. But this issue is just that the graphics card, one of the ports is bad.
Anyway, so who was over in the other session from?
Kayla is still there, and Joel was there, wasn't he?
He was coming in.
Here comes Colin. So we're waiting on Joel and Kayla. I think she was going to hang out there just for a little while in case anybody else responded to her emergency.
I do understand that.
And in fact, I can, since I have two monitors, I can chat with her over in that.
I overslept too. But of course, for me, that's not quite as dramatic on this side of the, on this coast of North America.
You're in New Brunswick?
Yeah, I'm in the Atlantic Canada with the moose and the igloos and teepees.
Are there moose that wander by?
Yeah, there are moose here. Yeah.
Meese?
Yeah, there's moose and moose signs. Watch out for moose when you're driving.
We have a lot of moose in Idaho too, Colin. They were really fun.
I'll leave my microphone on, but I'm doing dishes and stuff. Well, maybe I should turn it off. It'll be noisy.
Yeah, turn it off if you're doing dishes. They clank.
It's better to have your video on and the microphone off.
So we can make sure that you're not lying about doing your chores.
Go away. Go on. Go.
Okay. Hey,
You're doing great, Sam.
Since I overslept, the minute I realized I overslept, I started Zoom. So I haven't even let the dogs out yet.
Well,
Yeah,
go
go
ahead
let
and do
them
what
out.
you have to do.
Go get some
Like
coffee.
3 or 4 minutes, I'll let the dogs out. I'll be right back. Okay, if that's all right.
And I'm going to see if I
Go
can
for it.
fix my second monitor problem while you're doing that.
Why don't you get some coffee while you're at it, Sam? Oh. So how is everybody? Should we do some check-ins? There, that's better. My holder for my iPad won't hold the tension anymore, so it just gets floppy. Floppy. So how are you, Manny?
Good. It's a good day. Getting started. I wanted to go to the beach, take a walk, maybe a run.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Yeah, I got up early, so I wanted to do something. Yeah, I was gonna go to Trader Joe's, do some shopping. Yeah, but
Oh my God.
but we're good. How was your week? Anything exciting?
No, I didn't feel good all week. So I literally was in bed for days, which I'm feeling so much better today.
Yeah, you
And,
look great, so that's good.
yeah. I finally feel a little back to normal today. Doing a COVID test tomorrow.
Yay.
Yeah, anyway, yeah, the whole COVID thing right now is pretty out of control here. And
Yeah,
my son just had it. His girlfriend has it currently. I think I either had it or have it. So anyway, that's what's going on here.
how's the rest of the team? No infections.
I think so. How's everybody there, Barry?
So
Staying
far,
healthy.
so good. I skipped going to people's houses for Thanksgiving because there was just no way to quantify the risk. People, like one of the sons had been going to the gym every day, and although he was masked and everything, you have no idea if he's bringing back a load that he's asymptomatic of. So I skipped meeting on Thanksgiving. We may go ahead and meet on Christmas because he stopped going to the gym, mainly because it's closed. So
well, I
think
went
it's
out
gonna
of
be,
town.
yeah, I think it'll be safe this time.
I went out of town for Thanksgiving, and so did my son, and all of us came down with symptoms, like 5 days after getting home.
Oh, so you think you got exposed?
I think I may have gotten exposed, and if I didn't, I definitely got exposed last Sunday because my daughter-in-law tested positive on Monday, and we saw her for several hours on Sunday.
Oh dear, yeah.
And she had tested negative 3 times the week before.
Yeah.
And so we thought, oh, we're all okay. She's negative. But then she came up positive. So we're back in quarantine.
Yeah.
My youngest son. And yeah, I haven't felt good, but I have fibromyalgia. So I get fibromyalgia flare-ups that make me feel really sick, like I have the flu. And so it may well have been just that. But anyway, I hope I have it or had it so that at least, hopefully maybe I have some immunity.
Yeah, if you get little bits of exposure, not enough to be clinically enough to get you sick, you can build up immunity over several, subclinical doses. But at my age, at 75, I just don't want to risk it.
Oh, hell no. Yeah, and I shouldn't risk it either because I've got autoimmune stuff. But it's been super frustrating. Like trying to get a test in Los Angeles is not an easy, you can't just go down and get a test. Like, oh, I'm going to go get a test tomorrow.
Yeah.
I was supposed to get one a week after I got home, and it was such a rigmarole just to get it scheduled. And then it was several days out. So I didn't do it because I felt like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. I've been sick. Now I'm better. I stayed inside. I quarantined. And then I got re-exposed. So now, but it takes days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've been exposed a little bit over multiple times, chances are that gives your body a chance to build up immunity incrementally, which is better than getting a huge dose all at once where it overwhelms you.
Yeah. Well, I was just talking to my brothers, my sister-in-law, and she's on the front lines in Michigan. She's in Chelsea. And so she's a nurse, and she's actually getting the vaccine on Monday, which is awesome. But she said that the hospitalizations, that people are not being hospitalized as long. It seems like the symptoms aren't as severe.
Yeah.
So she's seen a kind of a decline,
Yeah.
which is interesting. And maybe that's just due to multiple exposures and people don't even realize it.
And they're doing better treatment because they've got more experience on how to treat people who may be coming in a little bit earlier also.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was happy to hear that. So I guess Michigan is still pretty, it's cooking. You guys want to see the box I just made? So here's,
Is that decoupage? What exactly are you doing?
I'm burning it. See this tool?
Oh, you're doing wood burning.
Wow.
Yeah, you have a
Yeah.
soldering iron. The kind that I
Yeah.
used to do real soldering.
Yeah. So there's the box. This
Yeah.
is somebody's.
Wow.
Is that a Weller
beautiful.
soldering gun?
That's
No, it's an actual wood burning tool.
Oh, I
It's
see.
not soldering.
Oh, it's not a soldering. It looked like a soldering gun. at
It
first.
does. So that tip, I can switch those tips out.
Yeah, those are the
and
same
adjust-
tips. Those are the same tips that my Weller soldering gun uses.
Yeah, yeah. So I can switch those tips out, and then it's plugged into a machine down here that regulates
The temperature, yeah.
the temperature. Yeah.
Yeah, it works the same as this.
And you change the width of the lines you're drawing.
Yeah, I have a whole set of nibs, so I can change it out. Now, soldering iron, I would be able to do like much bigger letters or designs, like super big, whereas this is more
This is wood burning, yeah.
You know,
detailed.
you can put a laser burner into a CNC machine now.
Yeah. Very
Yeah, that's
precision, very precision
Yeah.
laser cutting and laser burning.
So I'll
Mhm.
I'm gonna paint this with some coffee to kind of color it a little bit.
Yeah, to stain it, yeah.
And then usually I'll seal it with wax. But I've found that when I do this like back burning, where it's really the wax kind of settles in there and dulls it. So anyway,
That's
Right.
quite an art.
Bright pastel colors.
yeah. Good art.
thank you.
And the other thing that you were doing was kind of like needlepoint or something. I couldn't quite see what you were poking.
Oh,
needle
that's felting.
felting. Okay, I don't think I've
Yeah.
heard of felting before.
Yeah.
I knew about decoupage because I had a friend who did decoupage.
Yeah, decoupage is fun. So did you guys see about my post with the necklaces and stuff? Did you guys see that?
Yeah,
So I've
like a
here's-
monkey. Yeah.
hi,
And you're
Alex.
wearing one.
So here's one of them, which
Yeah.
reminds me of the macaroni necklaces that we'd make as kids.
all right.
But so I've sold two necklaces and a bracelet, and I got an inquiry from someone in Idaho about one today. So hopefully I can. But yeah, that was really fun. It was fun. Francis, I haven't gotten the baskets from Francis yet, and I don't know if I will. But the jewelry was really cool. I worked with Godwin, who you guys haven't met, who's in Ghana. And so he found a woman to make them. And then the woman went to the market and sent me pictures of the beads. And then, so it was really cool. It worked out. And, sending money was incredibly easy, and it just switched over to their currency right on their phones, which was brilliant. So it was super easy.
Did you ever do steady pins and steady swords when you were in grammar school? You take an ordinary straight pin and some ordinary beads and a little piece of raffia, and you make what looks like a sword with the sword handle or something, and you would make pairs of them. And if you wore them on your blouse open, that meant you were open. If you crossed them, that meant you were steady.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and we
That's-
used to make these in grammar school. Sam's raising his hand.
That's cute. I've never heard of that.
was like 1950s, so I'm sure it was long before you were born.
Well, not
I'm
that
feeling
long.
that if you guys were actually over with Kayla, you probably all checked in and sort of had a round of how's everybody doing already. I was curious whether any particular topics came up because I have one, maybe two prepared topics to suggest for today, if there was
Okay.
interest in doing so. But again, I have to preface it again with how sorry I am and how many apologies I have to give for oversleeping. I usually don't do this, no matter how late I am. Sometimes I've even told you guys I've stayed up all night and still made it here on time. But there's the one time I think I slept up, stayed up till about 4:30, something like that. And I was actually doing, what was I doing? I was doing work-related stuff and feeling relatively productive. And I thought 3 or 4 hours would do it, but not this time. So,
Well, nobody's upset about it, so don't beat yourself up.
anyway.
Take
Thank
comfort
you.
in the fact that we cared about you enough to worry about you.
Yeah, no, we were worried. I mean, we were going to send a search party out.
Actually got some work done, waiting.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's clearly one thing that's been going on this week in Facebook that I thought might be worthy to note or mention here. And that's this, I'll call it a little squabble that appears to have come up around, let's see, BB and Peter and Barry and Michael and Guy. I think I might have even participated there a little bit.
You did.
Not familiar with what I'm talking about?
I am not familiar with what you're talking about.
Maybe, okay. So this didn't get too widespread. Well, then we don't actually have to talk about it unless we would like to do so, because I thought it was a great case. It was a great case study in collaborology. So
Exactly.
if I give you my recap of it without you actually having read the entire thing, I am dangerously liable to sway you and bias you in exactly what happened. So
I think that's okay, because I think we're in that state most of the time anyway, and clarification is the game.
what, did I dangerously bias all you guys?
Sure.
You're not going to bias me because I was at the root of it. I was the instigator of the content that got her into
Oh, no.
trouble.
I just
Barry,
read.
would you like to give your version of it? And then I will then therefore correct you wherever you're wrong.
Yeah, that would actually be good. What had happened is that I didn't know BB at all. And some time ago, maybe a month or so ago, in GCC, she posted a post, and I was sort of I didn't know her and I didn't really know what the topic was, but I caught some comments in her post that triggered me to make a contribution or two. And at first I made a contribution about the relevance of an ABC TV series called Once Upon a Time, which I thought had some nice insights into it. And BB said, oh, tell me more about that. That's one of my favorite stories too. So I elaborated on that, and that brought up a further topic, which he asked me to elaborate on, and it had to do with the notion of bearing accurate witness. And I've thought a lot about the difference between not bearing false witness versus bearing accurate witness, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And I was looking for the foundations of that concept. And what happened in that discussion thread, and Doug was in it, Sam was in it, I was in it, a few other people were in it, and BB got real enthused about some things that I had said that she had not seen comparable discussions of. So she copied it over to her blog. She has a blog called Sapiens. And she copied it rather helter-skelter. It wasn't organized. It was just sort of, run on. And that was November 9th. About the same day that she had copied it over to her Sapiens blog, she evidently copied some of it, if not all of it, over to EOST, the Peter Jones's
Ecology of Systems Thinking.
Correct. And what had happened is, and I wasn't paying attention to EOS at the time, but what happened is that one of the admins, there's 11 admins in EOS, and they're kind of autonomous, according to Peter. He doesn't really supervise them. And one of the admins, we don't know who, even Peter says he doesn't know who, summarily deleted Bibi's post and blocked her, which really annoyed Bibi. When I say annoyed, I mean she took umbrage, which I don't even know the right vocabulary terms, but she was outraged. She blocked. She not only did she block everybody in the admin group, not everybody, but at least the key people in EOS, she blocked them. Then she resigned, not only from EOS, she resigned from Facebook. I mean, she closed her Facebook account. And the only way that I knew this is that just before she turned it off, she put a message in Messenger to me, telling me what had happened.
Hold on. Babe Bay isn't here, and I didn't know that's what the topic was. Is there any way we can talk about this without getting specific, Sam?
I, as you probably have heard, think that recount of facts regarding other people is valid. Saying what they think and what they believe is probably unnecessary. But in this case, I do think it is, to sort of recap her mental and emotional state. There are people who would like to only speak about people if they are present. I am not one of them. I think this is actually a good case study in collaborology. But if you feel sensitive about talking about someone who is not here, I guess you could listen. You could actually decide not to participate, or we could actually ask to bring her in.
Doug wants her to come in tomorrow for unblocking, but I don't know if she's ready to participate in Sunday unblocking.
But I actually think that the pieces around Baby are not the germane pieces.
Correct.
For this conversation.
It's
the
an instance
germane
of a
pieces
pattern.
are what's happened afterward.
Yeah.
What's
So
the
let me
name
focus on
again?
that.
BB?
Tyra?
Bibi Vunderman, also known as Debbie Mann. She has like 3 or 4 different ways that she renders her name.
Okay.
Vunderman, Debbie, Deborah, BBB, E with an accent, BE with an accent.
So maybe it's Bebe.
And sometimes she just uses Man as her last name. I don't quite know why she's got so many variations of her name, but she does. Some people call her Debbie.
She's a writer. She's writing a book. And so she engages with GCC occasionally on some of these ideas. She was really enthusiastic maybe a year and a half ago, came for several months, but has been relatively inactive lately.
Yeah. So she told me that what had happened. She told me that, she got deleted and blocked, and that she reacted in like way that she ended up blocking them. And then she disconnected from Facebook, so I couldn't even respond in Messenger. And because I didn't know her, I had no other way to communicate with her as a follow-up. And eventually, I think it was, I don't know how to pronounce his name, THYS, T's or Ties, told me that about her blog and her LinkedIn page, I think it was. And then I found that I could go to her blog, and it had a contact page where you could send in a contact, but it didn't disclose the email address. It's just one of those fill in the blanks. So I filled in the blanks and sent her some messages, follow-up messages of what was happening in the aftermath. And eventually somebody, maybe Colin or somebody else, who knew her email address, contacted her and made the connection. So then she started communicating with me by email. And I asked Peter Jones, what happened? Because I didn't really know what happened. And so Peter and I got into a conversation in PM. And about the same time, Nora Bateson posted something, I think in both GCC and maybe on her own page, that I thought was relevant. And so I highlighted Nora's post and said, I just had an experience that fits this model that Nora was explaining. And Benjamin, what's Benjamin's last name? Said, what happened? What are you talking about? And I told him. And it turned out that Benjamin was also an admin in EOST. So there ensued this long thread on my timeline. And I was relating what I had learned from Peter, which was in PM, and what I'd learned from Debbie, which was coming in from email. And then I discovered the root of this whole thing was this thread in GCC where Sam was in it, and Doug was in it, and I was in it. And Sam, I don't know if you remember, but partway through that thread, you said, I'm trying to save this whole thread on my disk drive because it seems so important. And you were having trouble saving the thread. But in the process, Sam said, this is a really important conversation, at least to the people in it. So it clearly wasn't spam, it was relevant. What happened is that Benjamin took umbrage on the fact that I had disclosed what Peter had said in PM. And what that did is it revealed more to the story than just the fact that a quote rogue admin had inadvertently or incorrectly deleted her and blocked her. Because later, Debbie said, it wasn't just that. She says there was a whole lot more going on, and she called it a darkness, which is a term of art that she probably got from Once Upon a Time, because that's the metaphor they use there. And I thought, well, now that's interesting, because why was she excoriating not just this one admin? She was excoriating Peter and all the admins and all of ES and really all of systems thinking. She was really pissed off at our whole culture. And I thought, well, then why isn't she pissed off at me? Because I'm part of the same culture. You know, if she's excoriating the whole culture of systems thinking, why is she saying that I'm doing good and everybody else is doing bad? Didn't make any sense. But then she went into what was happening beyond the fact that she got just blocked. And so now I'm going to give you what I think is my understanding of the issue. In EOST and elsewhere in systems thinking, you have your basic principles. What is the culture of systems thinking? What's our policies and protocols and principles? And this is where it turns out the rift arises. If you have an issue and you want to solve it, you want to diagnose it and solve it, you have to get all the information out on the table. You can't just get half the story, because then that biases the interpretation. And I wanted to get all of the backstory out on the table so we could understand what had gone awry. And what had gone awry in particular was that we didn't have the whole story. As a result, people were drawing different conclusions and engaging in different derivative practices. And the key difference was we weren't bearing accurate witness, which was this thing that BB got real excited about, this whole point of the importance of bearing accurate witness, because if you don't, the feedback loop goes awry. This is a fundamental theorem of feedback control theory, cybernetics, that the observer has to accurately report the true state of the system so that the controller can figure out how to steer the system to the goal state. And if the observer screws up and doesn't tell you the whole story, then the whole feedback loop goes haywire, which is what had happened. But I had run into a conflict because Peter and Benjamin said, thou shalt not bear accurate witness. You can't disclose, what you learned.
Not in
one
so many words.
Sorry?
Not in those exact words.
No, I'd have to. This is interesting. Peter, when I was communicating back and forth between BB and Peter in PM and BB in email, I was trying to be as accurate as possible of relaying back and forth what each of them was saying. And Peter said, I don't want to be paraphrased. You have to quote me verbatim in context. And I said, that's exactly what I did. I took what you said in PM and I literally copied it verbatim, the relevant paragraphs. He said, oh, but that omits the context from what happened back in EOS. I said, neither of us know what happened. Peter had said he didn't find out what happened. He didn't even know the admin. So I said, we don't have the true story. Anyway, it's underway, and Sam's in the loop, Doug's in the loop. BB has been following it. I know from email that BB has been reading that thread on my timeline, but she hasn't been participating in it. In fact, she didn't realize that she had reconnected to Facebook. She says, I don't know why I'm getting these messages from Facebook. And I said, BB, you reconnected. So, people are working from partial information, and it's a very interesting example because this phenomenon occurs all the time. But this is a very salient one, and I wanted to use it as an example, especially with Nora Bateson, because Nora Bateson has this concept. She has these two key words that she created. One is called symathesis, and the other one is warm data. And if you follow Nora, she has these two concepts. Symathesis means learning together or problem solving together, mutual learning. That if people go off in their separate cloisters and try to figure things out, they're going to come to different mental models. And that goes awry. And so Nora wants people to collaborate and learn and solve problems together in the open without hiding half of the information. And Sam calls it collaborology. And I'm looking at Sam's collaborology concept and Nora's symathesis and warm data concept. And I'm saying, these are kind of like synonyms. They may be exact synonyms or very similar, overlapping. And so I was trying to say to people like Nora, and by the way, Peter said, take this to Nora if you like, because Peter says, I haven't got time for this anymore. I got too many things on my plate. So I said to Nora, I said, I would, and I said this before to her, I said, I would like to see a live example of symathesis and warm data to solve a real problem that I can attend. And Nora says, I'll invite you. And in particular, Peter had suggested using this very example of warm data with Nora to see how can we, using the most advanced concepts of systems thinking, what Sam calls collaborology, what Nora calls symathesis, can we in fact resolve this problem using the tools for thought of advanced systems thinking? And that's where we are. We are and we're not, because there are people who say, thou shalt not bear accurate witness. I'll stop there and let Sam correct me.
So I have a few thoughts, but Alex has had his finger up for a while. So thanks for that recap, Barry. Alex, what do you have?
I had a post deleted at the audio.
You had a what?
Sorry, you have what?
I had a post deleted, removed.
Post deleted. Okay.
The same thing that happened to be.
UST or what?
Well, I got a reason. I got an explanation, and that surprised me. The explanation was simple. They said the post didn't have anything to do with system thinking.
So it was an EOST. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
It was an EOST.
In the ecology of system.
Do you know? Well, since they told you, you must know who said that to you.
One of the administrators.
There's 11 of them. Are you willing to disclose which?
One of the administrators doesn't like posts that aren't related to system thinking.
Can you tell us who that is, or is that?
No, I don't know who.
Okay, so let me add something here, okay? I'm an administrator, and there's actually a way to see all activity that administrators take.
That's true. That's true.
So it is possible to find out. So that's just my experience.
Interesting. Peter claims that he doesn't know and couldn't find out.
It's possible that they don't know about that, okay?
Yeah.
I think that to me, there's an additional factor, which I think you did mention, but probably didn't emphasize, which is at one point, Peter said that you could actually bring it to
Nora.
And that you had asked permission to share that thread.
Yes.
And that my understanding is that Peter had given his acquiescence, but then after some amount of back and forth between you and Peter, he later recanted.
Was the other way around?
No, I don't want you to share this with other people.
It's the other way around, Sam. At the beginning of the conversation, he said, by the way, this is a private conversation. That was at the very beginning. And then when he realized that this was going to be more complex and deeper and take more time than he had to offer, he says, okay, this is warm data, but it's too much for me. I'm going to back off. Take it to Nora. And after he said, take it to Nora, I said at the bottom, I said, is it okay with you if I go ahead and I was going to have to at least share it with Nora. I said, I'd like to share this publicly. Let me know if you object to that. And he didn't answer. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He just didn't say anything. He just stopped chatting with me. But if the one that I put up, I said, the only way that I can take this to Nora is if I can take it to Nora. Do you have any objections if I take this public? And he voiced none. So it's true that he voiced none. And I'm pretty sure that he saw the request. And that's when he should have said, no, 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 don't do it. So that's a little bit, I mean, he could say, oh, you know, by the time Barry asked me, I wasn't paying attention anymore, which could be true. But in the past, previously, like 2 years ago, I had a similar conversation with Peter. And at the end of it, I said, maybe he said, maybe we should take this discussion public. And I said, I said, I can take it public one of two ways. I can repeat the conversation, but redact the identity of the speakers, or I can use your identity. He said, go ahead and use my identities, no problem. So I have posted 2 years ago on a public website, a verbatim conversation with Peter out of the same PM from previous years, in which he gave me permission not only to repost it, but to use his name.
So what I'm interested in is how this might have possibly been preventable to some degree, because there's people who feel chagrin, there's people who feel that there's been a betrayal of trust, there's people who feel that they've wasted too much time on this, there's people who feel down and out rejected, you know, for inexplicable reasons. And then now there's some emotional heat happening in this thread. So either we all revel in reality and say, wow, this is all perfect. Or we could say, what could have been done so that the outcome could have been a little bit different?
Exactly.
Fewer people with frowns, fewer people feeling emotionally hurt, fewer people with chips on their shoulder, fewer people with points to make, fewer people with fingers to point to say, no, you're wrong. If any of those are desirable outcomes. So I'm always interested in understanding what happened and then replaying it so that we could have said, hey, you know, what was at play here? Was there a principle here that we'd like to reveal that would have been helpful? Was there a practice here that we should probably relinquish because it led to some undesirable consequences? So those are the questions I'm asking, okay?
I agree.
Now, from the very first account of it, and oh, by the way, to fill in the story, I don't know how many people Bebe contacted just before she left, but I was one of them. So she actually had a fairly lengthy, probably more than a page of interaction with myself before she deleted her Facebook or deactivated her Facebook account.
You still have that thread, right? You can still read
I still do have that.
Right.
Yes.
And I do
Both
too.
the public one and the private one.
Yeah.
So I do feel that it is ironic that in a systems thinking group, there would be, let's say, I wasn't there. So now this is actually quoting Bebe, but you know, what I gather she felt was kind of a laissez-faire kind of attitude that, oh yeah, it happened. Peter did offer to correct it and bring her back to the group. But by that time, I think she had already felt like, you know, she was mistreated by the group. And I know I'm speaking about her, you know, without her being here. But, you know, let me go just back up and say, our intent here is to learn. Exactly. And if our intent to learn is blocked by someone being absent, then that prevents the opportunity for us to learn. Now, we may learn incorrectly without that person here, but we're all reasonably intelligent. So I feel that there's a probability that we could probably learn some good things here, even though the person at the center of the initial part of this is not currently here. However, the person now at the heart of it is here, and that is Barry.
Correct. Okay. I stepped in as a surrogate, and I got some of the same treatment, mainly from Peter, that Baby got, and it had to do with characterizing the other person. I went ahead and let Peter mischaracterize me pretty grossly without reacting, because that's how I was discovering what else was going on. I think, Sam, you had said, or maybe it was Doug, that there's something going on below the surface of this Salient event of getting kicked out. That's public. But there was something going on underneath it. I think it was Doug that said, what's going on underneath the surface? And what Peter revealed to me, and this is all public because it's on my timeline, it's totally public, is that he began to characterize me much the way adversarial politicians characterize their adversary, painting them in the worst possible light. And in this case, he was doing that by presenting a character of my internal mindset, my beliefs, my desires, my fears, my intentions. And I go, now I am in intimate contact with the content of my mindset, my frame of mind. I know what my fears and desires are. I know what my beliefs are. I know what my intentions are. And when somebody asserts them to me and I go, this is baloney. This person's got a mental model of me that's a chimera of their imagination. For some people, that's really outlandish. They really get pissed. It happens to me so much that I'm used to it. And when Peter did that to me in the public timeline, I go, this is a clue of what's going on that Debbie says is a darkness. It's the mischaracterizing, mismodeling of other people. If you're going to do model-based reasoning, you want to use accurate models. So when Peter asserts an inaccurate model of my character, I go, aha, this is what's going haywire.
And for the record, I think he believes that you are doing the same to him.
I was referring to his practices, which are public. Practices are public.
So I do, hey, Joel, just to catch you up a little bit, we're talking about this little back and forth around Barry and previously Bebe in the ecology of systems thinking. And it's generated a little bit of heat and some emotion. So we were kind of studying that as a case study here. And here's what I'm thinking, okay? And let me just reiterate. Just imagine that two of us, let's say person A and person B, in this case might even be Sam and Barry, okay? Let's say two of us maybe had an incident, okay? And we're standing facing each other, okay? And we're pointing fingers at each other, okay? And doing this sort of thing, okay? So imagine that as scenario A. Scenario B is we're standing side by side. We're both facing the same direction. And there's something in the middle and we're both pointing at that thing in the middle and we're both trying to understand that. Okay? Call that scenario B. For me, scenario B is one that we can always take, in my opinion, in order to reach mutual sense making and to try and do some learning. Scenario A, where you're doing this, okay, okay, this is a case that generates emotions, generates conflict, generates disagreements, and then the stakes get bigger and bigger, and all of a sudden now it's a crucial conversation. And with crucial conversation, now your amygdala is hijacked, you know, your emotions are sky high, you're impatient, you know, you're acting based on, you know, patterns from who knows what, you know, but those previous times when you felt wrong. Okay. So I'm curious to see how we could actually be all standing side by side, looking at this thing in front of us and saying, what can we learn from this? That's the meta comment that I would like to make on this. The second meta comment is, if we take this position, it is always possible to learn. Even if we had nothing to do with that incident. Two of you who never read any of this, okay, could actually have listened to what's going on here and said, maybe there's something here that's you know happening, and let me lean into it, okay? On the other hand, most people who are not involved would not have the interest and would just bounce out.
Exactly.
However, my interest is in understanding how successful collaboration works and scales. And that's why I'm interested. Okay.
Can we practice it?
So that's why I say I am not 100% behind this other principle of never talk about somebody if they're not here. Okay. And I know that that gets at certain people. Okay. I do respect it in some ways, but it doesn't trump others. And I do think that the sincerity to learn and to understand, I place pretty highly.
Exactly.
And since this is barn raising and this is part of GCC about how we interact, that's why I'm interested in this particular case study. Okay.
Yeah.
I have more to say, but Alex, you got your finger up.
Yeah, I had a resentment against people on these sessions on Facebook and deleted my account and closed my group. I deleted my Facebook account and closed my image on the groups I was in first, trying to remove all trace of myself from the internet, but not the web, not my websites. I just got a resentment against Facebook. That's what it was. That it was a stupid thing to do. So I came back. But that was what caused the problem, was my ego, you know, my inability to accept that some other people can have their opinions and be accurate, but I could be in the wrong, and yet I feel offended. So I go and hide in the corner and cry.
Yep. Typical
So
first reaction.
If my agreement to the group is that I won't do that in future, I'll ask questions and dig a bit deeper to find out what happened.
Yeah.
And I can avoid that. Over.
Yeah.
And by the way, through all of this, one other reminder, okay, meta comment, is none of us are perfect. Okay. So we all have faults. We all have interpretation issues. We all have triggers, and we all have perception issues. So for us to really understand how to interact well, we can't be so absolute about expecting everyone to be perfect all the time, in my opinion. If we don't understand that basic humanity, I mean, what the fuck? I mean, I overslept this morning, okay? I wronged all of you by not showing up at 8 o'clock, which was the implied contract, okay? On the other hand, that's mice nuts to some of you for some things, okay? For other people, you know, it's probably an offense to be taken, you know, who knows?
Wasted my time.
Barry brought up an important thing. He said, what's the protocol for that situation? We don't have one.
Well, this is why it's so important for me to build the foundation correctly. Okay. Now, it takes a bleeping long time to do so. Okay. 3 years for a foundation, most people would have given up already. Okay.
Yep.
But I do think with one, we now have a brick that possibly we could build on. Okay. Even if it just suggests, oh, there needs to be another brick underneath it. Okay. So there's still that possibility. Okay. But with the fundamental notion about how we adopt certain practices or decisions or actions or, you know, even reasoning agreements, now we can possibly associate and build other ones. Okay. Now, I do think that if Baby felt so strongly that she was wronged, that we could take one scenario, which is, hey, somebody made a mistake. Peter came and said, fine, person made a mistake, willing to let you back in, you know, let's do this, okay? However, that felt insufficient in the recount that you made and also in the interaction I had with Bebe personally, okay? That she felt that there was more that could have been done and that just treating it as a simple mistake didn't feel sufficient. So that's one that I wanted to bounce back to you, Barry, because I think that that came across.
Yeah, but Tyra had her hand up before I respond.
Oh, sorry, Tyra. Again.
So I'm not understanding this situation completely as far as what actually happened. So I'm just kind of writing on what the emotions that are being expressed from the different people. And I just want to say that I can relate to what Alex said, and also to the reaction of Bebe, which is, we put ourselves out there publicly. We join these groups, we decide, and it can be very embarrassing, or you can feel shamed. There's a lot of emotions that go into somebody either disagreeing with you or misunderstanding you. And I think we can probably all identify with that sensation of ouch from an experience. And I have definitely bailed off Facebook for months at a time when I've had my feelings hurt. And it's a protection mechanism. It's also a way for me to reflect on what the triggers were. What hurt my feelings so much, and can I come back around and allow myself to get back in the playground with the other kids? So I think for me, I just wanted to share that, because we're all, I think, making ourselves vulnerable, and at the same time trying to protect ourselves. And I think that's an important element to this conversation. Hi, Joel.
So it took me a while. I mean, I could understand why Baby was angry at the one admin who deleted her post and booted her out. What I didn't understand at the beginning is why was her anger not just directed at the one rogue admin? She called it a zealot admin. I had originally called it an insubordinate admin, but then Peter says, no, they're not subordinates. We're all co-equals. He says, I don't supervise them. They have autonomy and I don't direct them. So basically Peter said, I'm the founder, but I'm hands off. Even though he appointed the admins, he doesn't regulate them or manage them or supervise them. And that was the first thing he said to me. He says, they're autonomous. He says, I can persuade them, but I can't direct them. So I actually lost my train of thought there. So the question was, why did Baby take umbrage, not at just the one admin, but the entire admin team and the entire community, not just the EOS community, but the entire systems thinking community? Why did she take umbrage at the whole shebang? You already got your hand up.
Tyra?
Because she didn't feel protected by the group. That's what I'm sensing.
Yes.
Bingo. Good insight. So then I thought, well, then exactly how do you get at operationally what happened? And operationally what happened was that there was a set of principles on paper that they had all subscribed to. And I found particular places where Peter and others had asserted these high level principles of learning from, everybody makes mistakes, but we learn from them and all this kind of stuff. But when reality hit the fan, they departed from these principles. And that's what Bibi noticed. She had expectations based on these expressed principles that were core defining principles of systems thinking. That systems thinkers behave this way, not like politicians who do all kinds of idiotic things, but they're very systematic and they solve problems and they don't fly off the handle. And so she had these expectations that were expressed by Peter and the others and thumbs up to them. And then when the situation happened, they departed from these professed principles. Nobody said, wait a second, we're not behaving like we're supposed to. We're not behaving like we promised. And that's why she got mad at the whole shebang. And I didn't realize that until I looked into why she was so angry at the whole community. And the reason she wasn't angry at me is I was the one who stood up and said, wait a second, we're systems thinkers. We're not supposed to behave this way. We're supposed to solve these problems. So she wasn't angry at me, but she was angry at the others because I was the one who was trying to uphold the principles that the others were departing from. Now, that's my hypothesis, but I would expect Sam and Doug and the others to take a look at that and say, Barry, did you diagnose that correctly? Or are you just, doing wishful thinking? But that's where I came out. That explained why Baby was so outraged, not at just one person, but the whole freaking community. The whole freaking community didn't live up to its ethics, its principles, its promises. And so she lost faith. She felt betrayed by the systems thinking culture, systems thinking community, because it didn't live up to its professed promises, its professed discipline, its professed principles. And when I did, I had to employ a tactic called bearing accurate witness. And they said, that's taboo. Thou shalt not bear accurate witness, Barry. We don't allow that. And
Not in so many words.
well, yeah, but yeah, I mean, Benjamin said, if you don't redact that conversation with Peter, I'm not going to talk to you about this. I'm not going to participate.
Was it Benjamin or Guy? I forget.
Benjamin.
Okay.
Now, I think Guy was on the other side. I think Guy is on the side that Sam and I and Doug are promoting, which is there are times when you bear accurate witness. I said the first case that came to, in my experience is I would get a private message from somebody who had a bone to pick with me. And in picking a bone with me, they would be abusive or threatening or violent, or verbally violent. And my ethic is, even if somebody says this is a private message and they're verbally abusive or threatening or violent, then I say for 25 years, I'm going to publish this thing verbatim. If you come in and say this is private and then you become abusive, forget, you can't assert privacy. And many times over 25 years, I have published on my blog a verbatim transcript of a quote private conversation where I didn't agree to be on the receiving end of abuse or verbal violence or threats. Now that I don't say that happened with Peter. There were elements of it that I think he would not have wanted to be revealed because it didn't show him in his best light. But then he also says, but I don't want you to quote me out of context. He says, I want you to give the entire context verbatim and don't paraphrase me. Well, that's a double bind. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. That's Gregory Bateson's double bind. Go ahead, Sam.
So I'm curious about this issue, which I see everywhere, okay?
Yeah.
And almost every group that I'm in,
Right,
is this notion that there's a need for quote unquote privacy, which is related to safety,
yeah.
which is related to shame.
Mm-hmm. I think you're on the right track there.
I think the shame issue is really, really deep.
Yeah.
Where let's suppose I had a group that was espousing collaborology principles, and I had the guidelines very firmly, identified. And somebody comes and says, hey, you're not doing what you said you're going to do. Okay. Now, if I kick that person out, and I'm not saying this is what happened at EOS because I was not there, for this. Okay. Then I lose an opportunity to adjust, to trim my sails, to do some course correction, to learn, to lean in. However, if my sense of shame at not being what I said I was going to be is so deep that I don't want that to be visible, that might be a knee-jerk reaction I might take. And I lose that opportunity.
People don't like.
I would like to think that I
facades.
would. Oh, sorry, Joel, you're saying something?
It's just that people don't like it when you show their facade to be a facade. When
The
show
facade
the
to be a
truths.
facade. Yeah, the facade is fake. And that's exactly the word baby. She says they're a bunch of fakes.
Yeah.
I go,
Isn't that where the word fake came from, or facade? Anyway, there's a.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, that's
a.
the one that arrested me. She says this whole culture is fake. I'm going,
Wait. I don't know that part of it.
it's in her email to me, which I can share with
isn't
you.
enough for me to say the entire structure is fake. Okay. Now there's maybe more history behind maybe in this particular group. I don't know. Okay. So I wouldn't go quite so far as to say one incident, unravels the entire thing. Okay. Just like I wouldn't say one identification of a misapplication of collaborology principles says that the entire thing has fallen.
Oh, I agree with you. I just wanted to understand why Baby was saying that, Where was she coming from when she said the whole?
Oh, by the way, for the record, I did invite her to join us here. Okay.
Oh, did she answer if and why? And why not?
I've been too busy talking here, so I haven't been checking the text to really double check. But anyway, no, she has not yet responded.
Okay.
So I'm still trying to figure out, though, if we were, let's say, encountering a similar example, what would be at play ourselves internally that would direct or guide our own behavior? Would we sense shame? Would we allow it to play out? Would we try to feel through it, if you guys use this kind of terminology, and then act? Would we step back, take deep breaths, and then try to figure out cognitively, what might be a recommended course of action? Would we contact someone else? What would be that set of things? And I just find that one particular act is all it takes to swing the entire situation. Okay, that's like one of my lessons I learned doing startups. Okay, you're only one phone call away from disaster. Okay, so no matter how well things are going, okay, one thing can turn things around so quickly. So one simple act, one perhaps not very well deliberated act, could set all entire courses of action awry. And what I think is curious, I'm not saying wrong, but I'm saying it's curious, is that if there was a mistake made by an admin, wouldn't it be interesting to sort of, and perhaps this is happening within EOST, okay, is to then debug that a little bit and then figure how it, might not happen again in the future. I don't get it. I don't know what's happening there, okay? But if it was in my group, I would try and figure out, okay, so what did happen and how did we not lean into this? Or at least even ask questions first about whether this was spam and what the intent of sharing that long thread was, as opposed to just, a simple act, boom, gone. So that one action set this entire set of events.
Liminal social drama, or Doug would call it alternate reality game.
Now, I also want to recognize not many people get to lean in so long, so deeply into something which was just a push of a button. Okay.
Here I am leaning in.
Physically harmed, people weren't, like monetarily, violated, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think it is an interesting case in human interactions and a case study in collaborology. And so I do want to recognize that, in most cases, we would not have this luxury to look at this thing in such detail. But it's also a privilege and a responsibility. Yep. Alex, you got your finger up. Joel, you want to say something? Barry, you're on.
I've got a proposal. I should write it up. It's about teaching the admins or training the admins in the procedure for handling an objectionable post without just straight out deleting it because you don't like it didn't relate to the conversation.
Right. Doesn't that appear to be so plain, right? But see, this is one of the reasons why in the early days of GCC, I actually did not support a particular practice which was widespread at the time, which was in the early days, many people said, anybody can be an admin. And in fact, I do know in this particular group, people were bounced out by the single decision of an admin. And that's an issue we still haven't gotten to the root of yet.
Love your frenemy.
So on the other hand, until we had agreements, it was all just a bunch of individual, doers and beers. And that's why I've been so focused on sense making and agreement before building up all this other superstructure of thou shalt not bounce out people whom you take offense at, in the space of half a second.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, they don't hate me. They're just trying to protect the group.
Right. And I also believe that there's a lot of damage that gets done in the name of holding space. I know that
Can I
this
have a
is a
definition of holding
relatively modern term of holding space, meaning providing safety. But if holding safe actually means safety for the 99% and not safety for the 1%, how do we fall on this?
Exactly. The scapegoat, the outcast.
Joel.
Yeah, this comes back to people's emotions, their perception of reality, their abstracted world, their ideas of what's wrong. We need to accept none of that is real for any of us. We look to nature for what is real between interactions of people. And when we look to nature, nature follows karma. If there's a lion at the water hole and the lion's not being threatening, then the other animals will come and drink. If the tiger or lion looks hungry and looks like it's about to try and eat someone, then the people aren't at the water hole. It's really, we try to tell everybody what they can and can't be from our emotional perspectives without understanding that most of us don't know what reality is. If you're academically educated in a Western civilization, it's very unlikely you'll have a clue of what reality is beyond the social construct. I mean, it's only people like us who take the time and scientific exploration to learn the driving functions of existence that get to understand how everything else is working. To everybody else, they're living the story. But to some of us, we start to see the functions driving the story. And when you've got people who don't know how the story is being driven, they try to force their story on all of us. And sometimes we have a better and wider view of that function of how everything works than they do. So their offense at our perspectives is them not understanding what is happening and how things are working.
Right.
I mean, from my perspective, I look at normal and I look at what normal does and how it acts throughout all of history. And it's always been the demonizing, alienating group. It's always been the one, no, I'm not listening to these more intelligent people who are demonstrating they're more intelligent. We're going to go this way. And if they tell us we need to go that way, then we're going to go that way. I mean, we can see this with COVID happening.
Yeah.
There are some good scientists who know what they're talking about with the virology. They're not listened to because what they're saying goes against what the social, emotional perspective is.
Yeah.
How do you fight that? When the majority think the majority are right and that the majority's emotions are right.
Governing. Yeah.
Won't listen to the people who are trying to say, well, this is how your emotions work. This is how you abstracted the picture in your head. And then you made you emote. Nobody else makes you emote. You do that. You can choose to react to anything how you choose. I mean, baby could have just chosen to piss herself laughing at the people's response. But she went down the other road. When I saw that post Barry put up, nobody deserves to be what was it?
Victimized or
Misfortunate.
yeah.
My misfortunes of my life led me to being what I am. So are we going to take away everybody's chances of learning and growing just because another person emotes about it? I mean, we don't all emote about the same subjects, the same things in the same way. Some women genuinely enjoy being prostitutes, which I don't understand. I mean, my own personal, emotional, and abstracted conceptions of that isn't a lack of understanding. But having spoken to some of these women, they're just like, yeah, I enjoy my life. I enjoy being around the people. I get paid well, and I get to live my life. But then you've got other women who would take more of my perspective and would demonize and vilify those women for being what they are, for expressing their own natures. I mean, it's a difficult subject to talk on like that, but there is those two different sides: those who find the thing abhorrent totally, and those who just don't care.
I think Alex had his hand up before Sam.
Yeah, some of the people following the narrative are, so to speak, and some aren't. And we get a mixture of those people online in social groups, and that causes some sort of issue. But I think if you be careful about the sources of your information and have a good virus scanner on your computer, you've got more chance of surviving the cyber attack that's coming from Russia.
Yeah.
At least they say it's coming from Russia. It could be coming from China. It could be coming from Washington. Who knows?
All of them.
Sam.
Tara, you can go first.
Oh, I'm not even on mute. I loved what you said, Joel. That was really, really well articulated from my understanding. And I wanted to tag on and say that how we react and how this woman reacted and the different ways in which she could have reacted. And one of the things I have found is when my feelings are hurt, I feel wronged, I get my posse together, you know? So part of that post where she's saying, I won't be, she emoted on that post is part in my theory, her saying, who's on board with me? Come on. Somebody get on board and say, yes, that's not right. You were mistreated. I think that's a human condition. The other, oh heck, that just went out of my head. The other element of that is compassion and empathy. So I think if someone is going to take on the role of an admin, part of that is like some of you have said, why wasn't she contacted first? Why wasn't there a discussion? It seemed like an immediate response. And in my opinion, it was a shitty response. If I were an admin, I mean, unless it was something really egregious, I wouldn't just do that. So there was no compassion towards her in the group. Didn't seem to be any empathy towards her. And it just felt like we're shoving you out the door. And when somebody posts something, unless they're just being a real jerk, I think are trying to post something so that other people will push that like button and say, I identify with you. I like what you just posted. And when we get kicked out for a post, I think it feels really personal. It's a really personal affront.
Yeah. So
to me, the real issue here was the admin acted rashly and didn't fully communicate and give Baby an opportunity to explain why she posted that. So those are just what's coming to my mind right away on that. Joel?
I actually had my hand up first. So Joe, go ahead, but then I've got 2 points to make.
I was just going to say, we've dealt with something like this recently when we had that post about Hong Kong and the overpopulation. We had two people arguing
Yes.
and whether we should allow this debate. And so we gave them the opportunity to come and discuss it in this forum. None of them took that opportunity.
that was whether it was racist or not. I think that was the key. Was this racist or was it not racist?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then at the first blush of it, it does seem racist. But then I think Joshua came on and talked about it, and he shed a whole different light on it that made me think, oh, golly, I had the wrong kind of assumption. Maybe I had the wrong assumption. So again, it goes back to what Joel says: is everyone has their own different perspective of reality. I'm completely
Right.
sorry, Sam. I'm not sure who's up next.
I think Sam.
No, in fact, that's why I think if you lean in and you ask, then there's these opportunities for additional information or perspectives or even actual real lessons. But if there's summary, conclusive action taken, then you lose that opportunity. And I'm probably premature, but I thought most people who've been on the internet long enough might have developed the de facto guideline, which is if you don't like it, move on. I mean, if you're going to object to everything you don't like on the internet, you're going to be here for quite a long time.
And bitter.
So if we could figure out whether there's a first opportunity to say, maybe I should just go do something else rather than take action on this particular one. And I have to do that every day, whether it's with taxes, politics, Trump, triggers, my ex-girlfriend, whatever, I have to decide that every day. Let's see, Kayla is joining us. Let me go let Kayla in.
I'd like to suggest that they introduce a rule for administrators in the group that when they find a post, when they come across a post that looks objectionable, they don't just delete it first. They talk to the other administrators first and have a discussion and then delete it.
My theory is that Baby probably posted something almost verbatim that was on her blog the same day. From the conversation of Sam and Doug and Baby and myself and a few others that was in GCC, she got a couple of fresh ideas that were new to her, and she was very enthusiastic, and she put them on her own blog. But when she put them on her own blog, she basically copied them kind of helter-skelter, so it wasn't carefully written up as a thoughtful presentation. It was just sort of raw material. And because this event happened essentially the same day or maybe the next day on EOS, my feeling is that she probably reposted some of that content rather helter-skelter. So it looked a little bit like spam, even though there was good content in it. It hadn't been thought through and recrafted. Like the one that I posted for her today that Joel was talking about, that was beautifully crafted. But if you go back to her blog on November 9th, you see it's just a helter-skelter reproduction of what she had gleaned off of GCC, and it hadn't been rewritten. And I think you could say, okay, that looks like spam superficially, but there's really good content. It's just raw.
Again, that just speaks to somebody should have reached out before pushing the delete button.
Right.
So it seems like just common sense stuff.
Right.
It doesn't seem like it should be this complicated.
So what
but
I'm
when
looking
you've got
for
11
are what can
admins,
be.
11
That's
admins.
even-
Nora's one of them.
yeah,
Is
11 admins. That's a
When you
lot
say
of cooks in the kitchen.
And they're
By the way,
autonomous.
we have more than that in GCC.
I would have
Yeah,
asked
but are
the-
they all, I mean, can any admin in GCC just delete a post off
It's
GCC if
happened.
they want to?
It's happened.
Really?
In fact,
Interesting.
I believe it was on December 4th. I was looking through that log of admin actions, and I saw 4 posts deleted, and Doug's name was associated with it. And when I asked Doug about it in the admin group, he couldn't recall. So I don't know whether somebody was actually using his account or what, but yeah, there were posts and comments that were deleted, 4 of them on December 4th.
You know, I
Before
wondered
that,
if,
2 years ago, people were kicked out by just a unilateral action of an admin.
Right.
So it has happened. And before I take umbrage at that, okay, I wanted to understand what agreements we could make. And that's why I've been trying to make agreements or understand agreements for so long. Otherwise, I would be guilty of the same thing. And then I would be, Mr. Hypocrite.
Yeah.
On the other hand, unless we have those guidelines, people come, people get wronged, people leave, and I have to suffer seeing that because we haven't been able to find agreements. People come, they get confused because we don't have onboarding principles. We don't have foundational charter kind of documents. We don't have guidelines on how you ought to behave in these groups, you know? Now, every other group does because they build on what has worked in the past. The difference is we're trying to figure out how to think about this anew. So we're not quite so quick to adopt what has worked elsewhere. That could be a mistake, and it has been for many people and many incidents. But I do believe that that's related to why we're here in the first place. Although I do realize many people don't yet or don't currently identify with those foundational reasons. Okay.
Well,
Which
Sam
is another
mentioned
point of difficulty.
hypocrisy. And you know, if you want to find a document in the annals of human literature that's about hypocrisy, you can find it right there in the New Testament. There's a whole lot of stories in the New Testament where Jesus stands up and says, you theologians are hypocrites. You're professing one set of concepts, but then you're not following your own guidelines. And he calls out hypocrisy recurrently in the New
Boy, do I
Testament.
wish Colin were here.
And you know, Baby didn't use the word hypocrisy, but you know, she described the issue as if she's using the definition of hypocrisy. And I turned around and said, yeah, it's a kind of a hypocrisy that she's calling out hypocrisy, and that's why she lost faith.
So I think the first step
Special agreement.
in calling out hypocrisy is just to understand, right? It may not be hypocritical.
Yeah.
To call something hypocritical on first blush, you know, may not be advised. That's what I'm trying to figure out, you know.
It
Lean
may
in.
not be diplomatic, and I'm not known for diplomacy and tact. That's the main
I guess I'm not
allegation
either.
against me is I lack tact and diplomacy. When I bear accurate witness, I'm just telling it raw like it is.
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out what can we learn and apply here based on what we experience either in Facebook or elsewhere, okay? Now that we have that first brick, what else could we build on? And how could we then establish things that quote unquote work?
And we need a seminar, a colloquium on this whole issue, because it's not just about this one-off event. This is a recurring phenomena in our culture.
Okay.
And not
I'm
just
going
in
to
general culture, but
rudely
in
interrupt you, Barry,
Sure.
okay? Because we don't have an agreement about not interrupting, okay?
That's
I'm just making
quite
an
all
ugly
right.
point, okay? And that is, I still believe that at the root of all of this is shame.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And we
But
don't
Brené Brown.
look at shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
that's
brick,
what-
the brick has to have,
Wait. You see how quickly we want to change subjects? We don't want to look at shame.
I was just going to say, Brené Brown has really opened the door on discussing shame. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Brené Brown's famous TED Talks and her other writings about it. I promoted her on my blog the very first time I came across her. I thought that was fabulous.
She more uses
we-
vulnerability, I believe, right?
Sorry?
Does she use the word shame? I thought she more
yeah.
used the word vulnerability.
Well, she uses both, but in her first famous TED Talk, she talks about, she says, I've studied shame. She's like a sociologist, I guess, is her discipline. And she says, I've studied shame. She's not the only one who studied shame. James Gilligan did too. And when she gives talks at corporations, they often say to her, oh, but don't talk about shame. And she makes a joke about that here she's doing research on shame, and she's invited to give a talk and say, but don't talk about shame. Taboo or not taboo? That is the question.
shame is mentioned in that song, Drift Away.
Drift away.
Yeah, ain't it a shame? Give me the beat, boy, to free my soul. I want to get lost in your rock and roll and drift away.
Yeah,
So,
I'll have to go back.
If we don't have rules, we open the door for more shame to be experienced. So rules are something important, and they need to be in place to support that brick we've created. Over.
But it also works the other way around, because if you're called out for breaking a rule, then you're being shamed. It's a shame to be a criminal. It's a shame to be a violator. So having a rule means you're going to call out people and shame them for breaking a rule.
Still less likely to create shame if people understand that there are rules and they are aware that when they break one.
Tyra's got her hand up.
So I wanted to give you, I was just listening to a podcast and it was about shame masks. Have you guys heard of that? So in medieval times, if you, for example, were convicted of being a nagging wife, they would put a bridle in their mouth, lock it
You
in,
can
and it
convict
had
somebody of that?
Huh? Yes.
You can convict someone of this?
Pick up your underwear. Oh, now we're going to publicly shame you and bridle you for being a nagging wife. But these shame masks were in all different varieties, and some were actual like bird type cages that they'd lock onto your head, and you'd have to walk through the town with this shame mask. So everybody knew, oh, they've stolen something. And they'd even have bells on them. So no matter where you went, people would know that you were coming with your big, yes, like the scarlet letter. So this idea of shame has been a part of our story since the beginning. And so it's no wonder that any sense of shame, especially public shaming, just cuts at our hearts. I mean, most of us, I mean, it's a very visceral reaction. So we have kind of evolved as far as we handle shame or not shaming, but social media is an excellent platform for public shaming. And it can be really easy and very dangerous. I'm complete.
Can I riff on that a little bit?
Stand up first.
Because of our feelings and our social stigma around shame, I really believe that has a huge part to do with why we have the politicians we've got. Those people, many of them, are shameless.
Mhm.
They're the ones that don't feel any shame to be exposed. I'm not talking about every one of them, okay? But there's certain the predominance of them. And if I need to explicate, I will, okay? But you take out almost at the start, okay? They don't even get to the starting gate. The people who have a little bit of shame around something they've done or something that they could potentially be exposed for. And oh, by the way, I got plenty in my past that I could be exposed for. So I ain't running for politics if I feel this way, right? On the other hand, if I do run for politics, I'm going to know that it's going to all come out. Okay. And most people make that trade-off and say, ain't doing it. I'll stick with my 9-to-5 job. I'll stick with whatever I'm doing right now. I'm not going into politics, you know? Even if we get $175,000 a year as a representative, I don't want to put up with it for this being the risk of being exposed for something that's shameful. For most people, it's what? A career, an affair, or something criminal that they've done in the past, or somebody who's going to, you know, out them for something. Maybe they're still in the closet. I don't know. Yeah. So because of this notion of shame being so powerful, this is why we get the politicians we've got.
There's a
way to handle it.
There's an interesting thing about shame, because one of the things I like to do in my research is go back to the earliest recorded story that has the same structure, the same pattern. When you talk about shame, the farthest back I can go to find a story about shame is the Cain and Abel story in Genesis. And after Cain kills Abel and he's identified as the murderer, he receives a stigma, the mark of Cain, a physical mark on his forehead, and it's come to be known as a stigma. And it's a mark of shame and a mark of pain. In fact, there's a famous statue of Cain in a garden, I think it's in Berlin, and I wrote a blog about it. but the stigma is literally, there is a Greek letter. You know, there's a sigma and a tau in the Greek alphabet. There used to be an in-between letter called stigma. It's the ST combined. It was its own glyph at one point. And you put the stigma, the physical glyph of stigma on somebody's forehead, and that was the mark of shame, which was also a mark of pain. And that's why the word stigma exists. But they dropped the letter from the alphabet, from the Greek alphabet.
Can I help you out there with that story, history?
Sure.
Even before Cain and Abel became brothers, wasn't there some shame around nakedness in the Garden of
That was
Eden?
the fig leaf. The fig leaf was when they became aware of their nakedness, that was an embarrassment because they were dissimilar in their physical appearance. And that was the fig leaf was the first cover up of something that
Okay,
gave them embarrassment.
collaborology. What if they leaned into that? Sorry.
Then you have two children. Then you have
Then
enjoyment to the children.
And they would have learned something from the tree of knowledge.
Something
Anyways,
what? Would have learned something what?
From the tree of knowledge. That they ate fruit from the tree of knowledge.
The tree of knowledge of good and evil. There was the tree of life, which is fine, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, not just general knowledge. The tree of knowledge of good and evil was the taboo, the forbidden one.
If you don't know it's evil, that means you can do it and it's okay.
Oh, no, the problem with the tree of knowledge of good and evil is that once you have defined the concepts of good and evil, that defines an axis with good on one end and evil on the other. And then what people do is whenever you have a continuous axis, they don't put degrees on it like a thermometer. They simply divide it into two categories, good and evil, and no in between. And as soon as you divide an axis into two binary categories, then you have on one side blessing, on the other side condemnation. And that was the mistake. It's the function that's put on the axis with a sharp dividing line. That's the mistake. That's a math error.
So this is God wanting us to not know about something, and Satan wanting us to know about something.
Yeah, in fact, it's very interesting. If you go back to Aesop's fables, Aesop uses a bunch of different animals to tell these moral stories. And usually the animal chosen has some character about them that sort of fits the story. So in the Garden of Eden story, the animal is a serpent. And you ask yourself, why do they choose a serpent as the spokesmodel for the opposite of the guidance that they're getting from God? And the answer is very simple. If you go back to the math and you say, what people do with good and evil is they divide it in okay and not okay, lawful and unlawful. And they put this switching function on it with a sharp dividing line. And if you ask the serpent to physically model this step function, can a serpent model this step function? Not so easily without breaking its back, but a serpent could model a very nice, graceful serpentine curve that says, as you go from saintly good to demonic evil, the reward punishment function rises gracefully with a nice gradient, as could have been modeled by the body of the serpent. But the serpent is selling the opposite of what he can model.
Yeah, well, I thought knowledge of good and evil would be useful.
It's not unuseful. It's just what function you put on it. If you put a dysfunctional function on it, you get the rule of law, which is dysfunctional.
Yeah. Without the knowledge of good and evil, what's going to happen? We're going to walk around naked and still be like Adam and Eve.
All the animals do. The animals walk around naked. Look at the cats and dogs. They walk around naked. Squirrels. Go ahead, Sam.
I'm curious because Manny's been here the entire time. He's heard a lot of this. Manny, I was wondering what's going through your head.
Sorry, guys. Just listening in. Great conversation, by the way. Great meeting. Learned a lot. That's the whole purpose here. So just kind of taking it all in. Regarding the topic, wasn't there, didn't hear much. But yeah, you gotta be able to work with each other and yeah, but this is normal but avoidable. Yeah, I'm kind of out of words today, but yeah, any advice, suggestions for me?
I'm curious, you say you're learning a lot. I was curious if you might share something that you thought you learned from this particular conversation.
Well, learned on, seems like you guys have other groups, for example, things like that. And just kind of getting a feel of the activities you guys kind of do around here. So just a rookie mistake or kind of type of thing I'm dealing with right now. Just trying to get a feel of what's happening.
We
For
had
those,
we had a discovery when we decided that people were all heading up the path to the higher knowledge at the top of the mountain, and the only person who was wasting time was the one who was running around and around the mountain telling the others they were on the wrong path. There's many paths to enlightenment, in other words, many different religions, Buddhism and faiths, and Seventh-day Adventists who got a different opinion of good and evil than the Buddhist or the Mexican Jehovah's Witnesses, especially those greasy ones down in Guatemala.
Yeah,
Sam
good.
has his hand up. I guess Sam is next.
Whenever this particular topic runs its course, I actually had a second topic I wanted to bring up. But if we are close to using up all the available time, which is like, minus 1 minute, then I'll leave it for next week. So I also wanted to call attention to the fact that we are at the top of the hour, although again, I do apologize, I was late today. So if anybody wants to wrap up and do some checkout, it's optional, or we could continue and I will leave this open. Tyra.
I'm going to wrap up and check out. I might text Kayla to see if you guys are still on, and I'll hop back on when I'm on the freeway here in about 15-20 minutes. Enjoyed seeing all of you, and cheers. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Good to see you here.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, I gotta wrap up. I gotta go see my mechanics. So gotta see how much that water pump's gonna run me. So thanks guys. Let's do it again. Always. Yeah, whatever you can do for me, throw it this way. I'll love it. Thanks
Well,
again.
thanks for showing up.
Yeah.
You're remarkably patient, listening for so long. So that's why I want to check in with you from time to time.
Yeah, as you
I'm not
should.
regular with the other sessions. I don't know, but do you also regularly attend Thursday, Fridays, and Saturday, Sundays?
I don't. I was not advised, but I'll look into that and see if that fits my schedule. Absolutely.
I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just kind of curious. Okay, since I can't, in general, attend Thursdays and Fridays, and I have some conflicts which prevent me sometimes, often, on Sundays.
All right.
Myself.
Yeah. Well, we'll look into it and kind of maybe join those sessions as well.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys. Catch you
Okay,
later.
so maybe I'll wrap up here as well. I do think that we're probably not yet at the end of this particular conversation, because there's two root fundamental notions that I'd like to bring up. Shame is one of them.
Yeah.
The other is transparency.
Yep. Both.
To me, transparency is what creates a lot of problems in government. So we can always point to government for some of the examples of the worst things that we could do. Okay. And if I look at how we could possibly prevent some of those issues, I've come to the realization, or maybe, I'm just slow to the game, that secrecy enables. It enables bribery, it enables corruption, it enables abuse, it enables predation. Secrecy is what people who do bad things use to cover up, literally. And so in areas of government, I think that especially when it comes to financial flow and power, flow of power and control, that transparency to me seems almost the only way to reveal wrongdoing. So I'm not yet able to prove this, but for me, it's a heuristic. And if I could prove it, I would love to. So I keep trying from time to time. I do believe that there are some valid reasons for privacy in cases, but that's where certain individuals are almost obviously threatened by revelation of some kind. But short of that, especially in government, we need to really understand how far to take transparency. And especially if transparency is being used to cover up shame. So I feel that those two are central to an unfolding of this discussion were it to unfold. And I don't think we're at the roots of them yet, but I do think there's some stuff here around transparency and shame. So I'll just leave it at that for now. Over.
For those who didn't see this long thread that opened up this whole thing, I posted in the chat the link to a public thread on my public timeline in which I started by simply sharing a new post from Nora Bateson. And in the spirit of what Nora was posting, I brought up this exception to Nora's concept, this liminal salient exception